Today marks the beginning of Passiontide, the final 2 weeks of Lent, during which the lectionary texts prepare us for the sorrowful journey through Holy Week and the terrible suffering Jesus would undergo. And the Gospel reading certainly sets the disturbing scene for what is to come. Jesus has entered Jerusalem for the Passover, and it seems that everyone wants to see him. St. John tells of crowds of excited folk pressing in to catch a glimpse of the rabbi who, they have heard, has performed many miraculous signs, including restoring life to a man 4 days dead in the tomb. And of those who indeed believe Jesus to be the one long promised through the prophets, and in their cries of Hosanna proclaim him as the one who saves. Of chief priests and Pharisees watching closely, seeing Jesus as a growing threat to their authority, and muttering to each other, "See, you can do nothing. Look, the world has gone after him." And fearing that if things escalate, the Romans could well intervene and impose severe restrictions upon religious life and even temple worship. And St. John tells us of a group of Greek pilgrims who, travelling to worship at the festival, had heard the heady news of Jesus and felt a compulsion to seek him out. And they came to Philip, saying, "Sir, we want to see Jesus." In their request is perceived the turning point of Jesus' ministry, for now the whole world, Jew and Gentile, is seeking after him. And Jesus' response confirms this. The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. But that turning point will not be marked by a show of worldly power and might. For Jesus tells of a harvest to come by the image of a wheat seed, of a single grain of wheat planted in the ground that must die if it is to bring forth a harvest, that to produce abundant life, it must give its own life. Moreover, he speaks of what is to come not in stirring, but in troubled tones. "Father, save me from this hour. When I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw all people to myself." Awesome yet terrible words. Words which speak of anguish and glory, love and hate, death and life. Those who heard his words were, as so often, nonplussed, and in the next few days were to see Jesus in a way they never imagined. We want to see Jesus. I guess deep down in every one of us is that longing, the longing to see Jesus as those humble shepherds did, still basking in the glory and beauty of the angel's song, kneeling before a tiny newborn, or to see him taking children in his arms and blessing them, to see him touching the untouchables, giving sight to the blind, healing the leprous, calming the storm, walking on water. The list goes on. Amazing, glowing gospel images that we hold so dear in our hearts, the images that bring us comfort and inspire us in our daily efforts to reflect his light and his love and his hope. But are we brave enough, resolute enough to want to see all of Jesus, not just the images that feed that feel-good factor of our faith? This year, of all years, are we strong enough to really engage with the story of the last week of Jesus' life, to follow him and see him out of his great love for us nailed to the cross? Lent 2004 is etched upon my memory. At that time, husband David and I belonged to a group that met weekly for Bible study and prayer, led by a wise and learned retired Lutheran pastor. Ash Wednesday of that year, Mel Gibson's controversial movie, The Passion of the Christ, was released. We decided, after much prayer, discussion and trepidation, that we would go as a group and meet directly afterwards for discussion and prayer. The movie theatre was packed. Now, from a theological and biblical point of view, the movie wasn't without its imperfections, but nonetheless, it was life-changing, heartbreaking, brutal, graphic, visceral. We saw Jesus as his disciples, the people in Jerusalem, and those Greeks would have seen him in the last 12 hours of his life. When the movie finished, not one person stirred for a full minute. And then everyone slowly filed out, some looking shocked, ashen-faced, some moved to tears. Our little group stood together in the cold, dark night, eyes to the ground, lost for words. No one wanted to meet to discuss what we'd seen, nor yet did we in the weeks of Lent that followed. Words were totally inadequate. Holy Week that year took on a whole new dimension for that little group. We want to see Jesus. Oh my, in those readings of the Passion, we truly saw Jesus. Jesus as fully, heartbreakingly human, and the searing reality of his suffering out of love for us. So often we tend to sanitize the last days of Jesus' life, and I know I'd much rather have stuck to the Sunday school narration I grew up with, and the crosses so often found in churches and in stained glass windows upon which is seen a clean and often passive figure of Christ, stylized, safe, not too offensive to the eye or the mind. That will be quite sufficient, thank you. But living in this broken and suffering world, we all know real life wasn't, isn't, and will never be like that. Fully human, Jesus suffered as we suffer. Fully God, he was, out of an incredible, unfathomable love, willing to enter in the suffering that is our suffering, to show solidarity with us, to show us that even though we have made such an unholy mess of things, he chose to take the consequences of our miserable attempts to go it alone upon himself, so that lifted up from the earth on that hideous cross, he would draw all people to himself. After the long, hard road of the past months, our Lenten journey towards the cross this year may hold a particular resonance, for we have been all too aware of suffering, of walking together through the valley of the shadow of death. But with the gradual easing of restrictions, there is hope on the horizon, a hope that reflects the hope we carry within our hearts as, living day by day, we are called to live Christ's way of love. A hope we witness to as church communities in these days of being apart yet together, as we determine to journey to the foot of the cross and towards the light that we know is beyond. And the sure and certain hope that in the light that is beyond the agony and suffering of the world, yes, we will see Jesus face to face, safe and secure in his amazing grace.